in the history of this podcast. We've been through so many of your wardrobes, Jake, or elements of your wardrobe. There was the Nike hoodie. There was the plaid shirts. There was the incredible winter sweater that your mom knitted. And now this outrageous tie-dyed shirt. What is going on over there?
Yeah, this is a special shirt that I've got on here. I don't normally, tie-dye is not normally one of my go-to looks, but this is if you're listening only, this is a tie-dyed shirt with yellow, kind of a, I don't know, forest, pale green, and kind of a magenta swirled together. And it is a Lithuania basketball shirt. So if I kind of lean back, you're going to see a skeleton.
Oh, there. Wow. That is so cool.
Dunking basketball. And
if you are listening only, you should get over to YouTube and check this out. Yeah. It's worth changing apps.
Well, in the 90s, I guess, this is the same year of the first Dream Team.
Oh, cool. So this was like the team that went to the Olympics, the Lithuanian national team.
Yeah. And so this is the year, 92, I think, when it was the first year that professionals were allowed in. And so the US had Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, just all of the legends of the 90s and late 80s there on that team. And the other really fun storyline about that Olympics was the Lithuanian national team, who was sort of sponsored by the Grateful Dead, and they had a really good team. Also, the other thing was they had a really good team, but they didn't have the money for uniforms or something. It was sort of post like Soviet Union kind of thing. Yeah. And so they had these warm-ups and maybe even uniforms that were tie-dye.
Wow.
And it just really stood out in my mind because I think they got the bronze medal. I don't know. Somebody should fact check that. But there was a guy on the team Sarunas Marshallonis, who ended up playing for the Seattle Supersonics later. So it was a big thing for in my head.
Yeah.
And our friends, Steph and Egle Krushan in Switzerland. Well, Egle is from Lithuania, and we were talking about this at some point. And then the next time I saw them, they had been back to Lithuania, and they said like, "Hey, here's a gift for you, Jake." And so this is my Lithuania basketball shirt. It's big.
That is amazing. Treasure. Wow. Yeah. Was it difficult for them to find the shirt?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a thing you can definitely get in Lithuania. That's my understanding. It's like they were like, we're talking about, they're like, oh yeah, we know that shirt. So
it's funny about the Grateful Dead, because when you showed it, when you lifted it up and I saw the skeleton, I was like, that looks like a Grateful Dead shirt. But I didn't say it because I was like, that's sort of a silly thing to say. Okay. Well, with that out of the way, should we make a podcast?
I think we should record a podcast.
Let's do it.
This is Jake and Jay-Z. This is Jake and Jay-Z.
Welcome to episode 17 of Jake and Jay-Z, the weekly podcast about startups, design, technology, marketing, Lithuanian basketball, the Grateful Dead, tie-dyed t-shirts, and other stuff that we're thinking about. That's Jake over there. I'm Jay-Z. That's short for John Zaratsky. We are the founders of Character Capital, the authors of Sprint, Click, our new book, and Make Time. And this is our podcast. And if you'd like to get a weekly newsletter with the latest episode and other cool stuff that we found, you can go to jakeandjz.com and sign up for that. Jake, I wanted to tell you a short story about an interesting conversation. I thought it was an interesting conversation I had with a founder recently. Is that cool with you?
Always up for a founder story.
Okay. So I was chatting with a founder. This is not somebody that we've invested in, but sort of a friend of a friend who I like. I think she seems really smart. I think she's got some interesting ideas, things she's working on. We were catching up and she was kind of sharing with me a difficult decision that she had to make. For months, she's been negotiating a deal with a large company, not an acquisition or anything, but like a partnership that would really help her startup with distribution and some other strategic advantages. But the sort of thing that's like would actually be a big deal. It would change the fortunes of this startup. And I guess unsurprisingly, in hindsight, the negotiations had just dragged on and on. It had just been like super difficult. Like at first, they basically, they had a verbal agreement this whole time, but at first the company was, really easy to work with and really eager. And then as it got into legal and all the things that happen when you're dealing with big companies, it just became like a huge distraction. She was beginning to wonder if it was even worth continuing with the partnership. So we were talking through that, and I was sharing with her an observation that I had from working with so many companies over the years that I just kind of thought of in the moment. I was just sort of like, this might be a helpful way to think about your decision, which is that when you're building a new company, like there's a few things that are really important, right? Like building tiny loops where you can like learn really quickly, like, showing things to your customers, like testing. Like there's sort of some core things that really matter. But I think one of the meta things that matters a lot when you're starting a new company is maintaining your freedom of movement, your ability to maneuver and to operate and to make decisions. Because when you don't have it, when you're stuck on a track for whatever reason, maybe it's because you've committed to something, maybe it's because you've got put all your eggs in this basket of partnering with this one big company, it could work out well. But in the meantime, you don't have any ability to do anything about it, right? Like you can't pivot, you can't try a new idea because you're sort of locked in. And so I was explaining this idea of freedom of movement to her, and she followed up with me a couple of weeks later and said that was a really helpful idea for her, and and she actually ended up like calling off the deal with this company. And she said that it felt like, even though that was going to create some new challenges for her, she felt so much better. She felt like she could do the work of being a founder, which is to like try things and learn from those experiences. And she hadn't been able to do that before. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. And it reminded me of like what we do in sprints, which is like, in a way, give people freedom of movement, right? Because like, if you're locked into like, oh, we're building this product and like, it's going to take us 3 months, it's going to take us 6 months. And you're just sort of like, you're on the tracks and you're executing the roadmap. Like you're not free to change. And that's why people end up shipping things that don't make sense. But, I think in sprints, like you have freedom of movement because you can like really quickly test ideas, learn from those, change things, try them again, etc. So anyway, how does that strike you?
I think that's pretty interesting. I was thinking about a conversation that you and I had this morning with some other founders who they were just reflecting on something that I feel like we can probably list off a bunch of founders who are in our portfolio who have this problem where they've been inside the big company. So this is the partnership with the big company, but they've been inside the big company and they've had the experience of trying to build something inside the big company. And at some point they leave, and then now you have freedom of movement because now you're a startup. And there are so many advantages that a big company has. And in the case of a partnership, they provide money and stability and perhaps the social proof of the logo you can envision on your page once you've done that partnership and got it out in the world. But the speed of a big company is not fast. And that is one of the primary advantages of a startup is that they're not encumbered by legacy organizations, legacy products, legacy commitments. The seesaw goes from lots of money and audience and everything, distribution at the big company, but the seesaw shifts when you're at a startup, and now you can move fast. You can do whatever, like you can build whatever you think the right thing is. If it's wrong, you change direction, throw it away. It's things that are hard to do inside a big company. So if you're at a startup and then you tether yourself to a big company, it's like, man, you've almost given up what makes you most startup-y. Not in every case. I certainly think there are examples we can think of too, where a company has started off, they have that pilot, that design partner, so to speak, the company who they're working with to figure out the first version of the product, and it works. But you probably have to be really wary of, is this the healthy kind of benefit I'm getting from that partnership, or have I been drawn back into the web of slowness?
I hadn't been thinking about the contrast from being inside a big company to being at a startup, because maybe not every, but certainly many startup founders worked inside a big company at some point in the past. We sometimes we invest in some founders who start companies right out of college, but like I would say most of them probably they know what it's like to be inside a big company. And so then if you start a startup, but then you make decisions that limit your freedom of movement, and you become more like a big company in some ways. And you take away one of your big advantages. In the foundation sprint, we have this this set of activities about identifying your unique advantages, because we think that really helps the team kind of figure out what their differentiation can be. Like, what solution can they make that's going to be radically different than what exists in the world? And ideally that comes from their unique, their capabilities, the insights that they have, what's, their unique motivation. We probably could always just have that in there as a standard advantage, which is we can move fast and we can change our minds. That's always an advantage, at least over big companies. But we don't put it in there because it's it's sort of the built in. It's built into the firmament of what it means to be a startup. But if you inadvertently take that away, you've taken away a part of what makes a startup a startup.
That's interesting. It's a good one. Freedom of movement.
I'd like to think of a slightly better name for it because it sounds sort of geopolitical.
Right. Yeah.
So if you think of one, or if anybody listening or watching, if you think of a better name for this phenomenon, let us know.
Well, I've been thinking about sleep a lot lately to take a left turn here with no signal, because I keep waking up. Holly, my wife, keeps waking up. We had a lot of problem with getting the temperature right in the room. Maybe we're starting to have some hints of spring, but you open the window, which we do at night. It's it's cold. You don't want to be too cold. You don't want to be too hot. And I feel like the older I get, the more I have these kind of random wake ups where I'm too hot or I'm too cold. And so I got a recommendation from both my doctor and from our friend, Jonathan Courtney, to check out the 8 Sleep. Both of them have it. And we're like, it's really great. You should check it out. So I've been down the rabbit hole recently of researching this. And so what the 8 Sleep is, if you're not familiar, and this is, by the way, this is not an ad. This is one of the few podcasts where you'll hear about the 8 Sleep, and it's not a paid advertisement for the 8 Sleep. So if you're listening to Huberman or whatever, you're going to hear sort of the paid ad for it. But this is actually my experience researching it. And it's a very expensive mattress cover. It goes over your mattress. It has a pump kind of thing connected to it, and it pumps hot or cold water through the mattress. There's a separate settings for each side. You pay a subscription. You not only buy the expensive mattress cover, but you also pay a subscription for the AI, in the app that figures out dynamically, I guess, through the night, are you too hot or too cold, and adjusts the temperature accordingly.
Oh,
which, according to the people,
the thing also has sensors in it that it knows something about you.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I can't tell if that's a hard engineer. I mean, I'm sure it's hard. I'm sure it's not something I could build in my garage, but it's anyway, the idea is you have fewer wake ups. In fact, literally what Jonathan said was fewer random wake ups with this thing. And it's great. And now I hate to sleep. Not, if I travel, it's annoying to me that I don't have temperature control throughout the night. So I researched this thing. It's just a weird enough thing where I was like, well, what are the alternatives? And I found myself in shopping mode, which we often talk about in sprints, trying to get people into shopping mode when you're testing your own ideas, because this is a mode we all know so well. And so I was like, what are the other products out there? And there was one in Canada called Perfectly Snug that makes, which I thought was a great.
What an adorable name.
It's adorable, isn't it? And theirs is uses air, and there's no subscription fee. You just buy it once and you're good to go. And then I was on Reddit, and I found this Reddit thread where an 8 Sleep user had gotten a new size bed. And so they had to get a new one. And they were like, well, I'm going to try this Perfectly Snug thing. And they were kind of writing, and people are replying, and then they said at one point, well, actually the Perfectly Snug is great. This is a revelation. And then later they wrote back and they were like, update, I can't remember if I think it got hotter here and it's not cooling as well as the 8 Sleep. I miss the 8 Sleep. So
yeah.
Anyway, so I ordered the 8 Sleep. That's the TLDR.
Oh, wow,
I ordered
you
it,
did.
and
Okay.
we'll see what happens. But all of this made me think about sleep in general. And it's another topic that you and I have talked about a bunch, and we talked about in Make Time. But that was a few years ago. And I find already like my needs for sleep are different. And maybe or maybe not, the 8 Sleep will make it in to my repertoire. But I wondered if you had any new or adapted sleep techniques, or if you're using ones that were in the book. Like what's in your sleep stack?
I remain very low tech in my approach to sleep. And part of that is, I guess it's basically laziness. It's laziness crossed with cheapness, just like not wanting to like investigate and buy a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I also have what is perhaps a not entirely principled opinion about sleep resilience. That idea of like, oh, I travel and then I don't sleep well because I don't have my like fancy mattress. Like that sounds really bad to me. So I want to like learn how to sleep in all different beds and like be able to take my sleep stack with me so that I'm more resilient. But I don't know if that's right. Like maybe that's not the right way to think about it. So a couple of things that have not changed since we wrote Make Time, and even years before that, my wife and I, we still have a pretty strict no devices rule in the bedroom. So when I don't remember, I think we had this in San Francisco too, but when we moved to Milwaukee, one of the things that we did when we were setting up our apartment was our phones have like a home. They have like a charging place it was in the dining room. Like now it's in the kitchen, but it's a nice little tray with like, we have 2 like MagSafe chargers. So like they live there. So it's like, that's part of the evening is like, put the phones there so they don't end up in the bedroom, don't have TV in the bedroom. Kindles are sort of the only device for reading. And so that's the one thing. And the second thing that is still really important is how I interact with light at bedtime and leading up to bedtime. So I don't know if this is one of those things that I think there has been some research about the effects of it, but as time goes on, it becomes less conclusive, not more conclusive, like the effects of blue light and just bright lights in general before bed. Regardless of the research, I find it sort of like just soothing to like lower the lights and just kind of have the last couple hours of the day before bed around the house, like, turn lights down, have just a couple of lamps on in the bedroom. And, even with the Kindle, like I don't turn the backlight on. I would much rather have a lamp on the bedstand and like be reading without the backlight on. I don't know if it makes a difference, but it just kind of like gives me this overall sense of coziness and comfort, the sort of warm yellow lights versus like the bright white, bluish white light. So that's the second thing.
Do you have a Kindle with the warm light?
I guess not. I guess I missed that innovation, that Kindle innovation.
1992 Kindle. I mean, because the Kindle's for like, if you get a Kindle now, it's got the warm light.
Really? I just got a new Kindle like a couple years ago. Does it have a temperature adjustment? Can you make the light?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I need to dig into the settings. Okay. Yeah.
And it's embarrassing for you that you don't know that, but it is. So you go into the settings, there's like a warm to cool slider.
Amazing.
Probably. Unless you got like some kind of
like a one. Refurbished.
If you don't have one, I'm going to mail you one because I have an extra Kindle. I'll mail it to you. So I want you to let me know immediately after the recording this.
Okay.
If you have that adjustment.
I'll check it out. Yeah. So no devices, warm, low lights. And then I also, probably the only change in the last couple of years is I wear an eyemask. Like, not every night, but many nights I wear an eyemask. And that's part of my portable sleep routine, is that I travel with it. And so wherever I am, like I can put that on and it makes a huge difference. I mean, I guess it's related to light, but it is such a good physical cue for the body of like, it's time to sleep. It works really well for me.
Man. Just,
Yeah.
Interesting. So Eyemasks for me is always only a travel thing. Because it just feels, like I'm never comfortable for a whole night. I could take a nap with an eye mask, but like for me, it's just like, I'm really sensitive to the head, I guess. It's just the tightness. But The other thing about the eye mask, I'm curious how you work around this, is morning natural like light. Does that play a role in waking you up, or are you able to wake up with the eye mask on?
So usually, so I put the eye mask on and I fall asleep, and then at some point in the night it comes off.
Okay.
And sometimes I notice that it came off, and I put it on the table. Sometimes it just like ends up on the pillow or like in the bed somewhere. But I have never worn it the entire night. So like I've never. And actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we were both a few weeks ago. We were in Berlin. We were working with AJ and Smart. Speaking of Jonathan, launching the new book, Click, and so we were in hotels.
Buy many copies of it.
we were staying in hotels, and they had, I don't know if you probably noticed and appreciated this. They had pretty good like blackout curtains. You could make the room pretty dark there, and that is more challenging to me, not having the natural light in a hotel room where there's blackout curtains, versus at home, our curtains are not super, super dark. So I like that my eye mask manages to come off, and then I do have the cue of early morning light to help me wake up more naturally. Whereas in hotels, I kind of feel like I wake, my alarm goes, I wake up and I'm like, what time is it? Where am I? Like, what's going on? And then I'm like, oh, I see like some little sliver of light, next to the curtain. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, yeah. It's daytime. Cool. Let's wake up.
Right. Yeah. When changing time zones, I feel like, okay, the light from outside is really helpful, but the chances that it's going to get like the sun's going to rise when I need it to is probably not amazing. So I always play this game where it's like a slider between how much light am I going to let in. I want the blackout shade to be like 90% closed. So like a little bit gets in like the corner. And I figure like I can sleep through that for maybe an hour, but whatever. I'm looking at the time that the sun rises, probably overthinking it.
Hey, that actually gives me an idea for a new sleep business, like smart blackout curtains. Like,
oh yeah.
Does that, I'm kind of surprised. Maybe it does exist. Be kind of cool if you could program it based on, sunrise and sunset where you live. That seems kind of useful.
What if the curtain itself had full spectrum warm lights built into it, so that if it was like the dead of winter, you could get the glow right from the
at the exact time you want it.
Probably a little overcomplicated, but maybe in like 2050, when everything's being run by AI and it's just trying to figure out ways to make us happy, maybe that would be a product.
What if you could travel with your curtains?
Yeah. You could picture me coming into the hotel with like my curtains and like my mattress cover.
You have like another suitcase with you. It's like all your sleeping gear.
The thing that I opted not to buy, because it made the 8 Sleep even more astonishingly expensive, was a base that goes under the mattress and is mechanical and will like lift you up. If it detects that you're snoring, it'll like lift up your head. And I read a bit about it, and people talked about sort of the sound of that might wake you up anyway. Sort of like mechanical snoring instead of human snoring. Although the snoring is supposed to be not great for you. So I was a little torn. I mean, I definitely thought about it a bit, but then Jonathan said like, it's a moving part that's going to break. And this is like the V1 of it. So they're on V4 of the mattress wrapper. So they probably have that more figured out anyway.
What about you? What's, apart from the temperature issue, like how have your sleep habits changed in the last, 8 years or 6 years since we wrote Make Time?
I think it's still a lot of the same stuff, and a lot of it is low tech, and it's the kinds of things you mentioned, not doing anything like watching TV or using the computer before bed, especially in the bedroom, and not having like overhead lights, but just table lamps throughout the house in the evening, that there's not bright light anywhere. We will occasionally watch a movie or a show or an opera, to make a reference back to a recent episode, in the evening, but that's not the norm for us. Like the norm, because I do find that anything, maybe less so an opera, but any movie will like will get me like a bit jazzed, and it's a bit harder for me to sleep.
Yeah.
So stuff like that is part of the routine. I have been wearing my, Apple Watch at night to track sleep, because it'll give you like a little chart of when were you in deep sleep and that's been like recently, just with the wake ups, have noticed that you can see it on there. And so I've been trying to draw connections between, did anything happen during the day, or like the way I set up the temperature, or the blinds open or the blinds shut,
trying to establish the cause and effect.
Is there anything going on there? White noise. We have the HomePods, the little HomePod minis, and they have like a nice like ocean sound effect, although those HomePods are like they're not great. Like, in general, I don't know if you've read much about that product, but like it's very Siri driven. And as you know, Siri is like limited. So almost the only thing we use it for is to play this ocean sound. So it's like way overkill.
Like really expensive white noise machine.
And like every fifth time you say, "Hey Siri, play ocean sounds," she'll play like some song called Ocean or by an artist named Ocean, and it's invariably like the exact wrong vibe for when you're trying to go to sleep. So that's a challenge. But one thing I've been trying to dial into is, when is the latest I can actually have caffeine? And I think we talked about this during the caffeine episode, but it stays in the body for a really long time. And just within the last few days, I've been wondering, because I see these little wake ups that I sometimes like, you wake up in the night and sometimes you just like not really awake all the way and fall back asleep and don't think anything of it. It's not like being awake for half an hour or something. But are those disrupting in a way that's affecting like how sharp I am the next day? It might be. And there's a certain amount I can help with the temperature, but then I'm also wondering, am I drinking caffeine too late? And it's not at the level of like obvious, like, oh, it's time for bed, and I'm lying there with like my eyes wide open, but it's a subtler level where it's just bouncing me or not letting me get into that sort of smooth sleep. So I don't know. I'm kind of in a like, I feel like I have a good foundation of stuff, but at the moment I'm in a little bit of a quest mode for making it better. So, we'll see.
How late are you drinking caffeine right now?
My goal is is not having it after noon. Cause I think maybe we talked about that during the caffeine episode.
Yeah, we did.
That's like a study or something. And it's like, you're like, the death rate goes up or something.
Yeah, that changed my behavior. I think since we recorded that episode, I think I've only had afternoon coffee like maybe twice.
Yeah, it changed my behavior too, but I still will occasionally do it because it's nice. I like coffee after lunch, and I can still go to sleep. But then lately I've been like remembering the specter of death, and also looking at the little chart on my phone that's like, look at all the little orange spikes where I woke up, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have the after lunch coffee. Maybe I need to dial it back. So I was going to make another little topic change here, another left turn, no signal, which is audiobook recording. This week we're recording the audiobook for Click, our new book, which hopefully your listeners already know all about. But
if you haven't already, you should buy at least 100 copies of it.
At least at minimum.
Theclickbook.com.
Anyway, this week is audiobook recording week for us. But whereas when we recorded the audiobook first of all, we wanted to record the audiobook ourselves for Sprint, but it didn't happen. They did it in the normal way at that time, which was to hire an actor to do it. And it's, I hear people say that they like it. So that's more of a selfish thing, perhaps. But I think it's become more common. Certainly audiobooks have gone way up in popularity since 2016 when Sprint came out. You and I really wanted to do it and got to do it on Make Time. And that was really fun. We're both living in San Francisco. We went to a recording studio. We sat there together and recorded, going kind of back and forth and figuring out, how we're going to do this transition and everything. It was great. And the only drawback I remember from that one was my stomach was growling so loudly that you had to do a lot of retakes, because while I was talking, it wouldn't happen, but I was just sitting there while you were talking and my stomach was
just sitting there thinking about sandwiches or something.
I was thinking about sandwiches. I remember I had just come back from a trip, speaking of time zones, and my whole eating clock was off, and I was just perpetually hungry through the entire recording. And the engineer kept saying like, "I'm sorry, John, you have to re-record it."
That is pretty funny. I completely forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't have reminded you. But anyway, that's what happened last time. But this time we don't live in the same place.
Right.
Big drag for me to not get to hang out with you in person as much.
Likewise,
and drag
yeah.
for the audiobook, because you had to record yours in Milwaukee. I'm going to be recording mine in Washington State. And you recorded already. You was it Monday. You recorded. Yeah. So what was that like? Anything different from, besides me not being there, anything different that I should prepare? Because tomorrow I'm recording here.
Yeah. Well, it went way faster. I was done in like 4 hours.
Now you know why. Now you can know exactly why.
And yeah, you mentioned this briefly, but when we recorded the audiobook for Make Time, I don't think we marked up the manuscript at all.
I don't remember marking it up.
Yeah, we both had I think we both had a PDF of the book. The book hadn't come out yet, just as, now Click has not come out yet, but we have a PDF of the book.
Yeah.
We had it open on iPads, I think. And we would just sort of go through and we'd look at the chapter and be like, okay, you do this part, I do that part. We just sort of made it up on the fly, which I think made it feel pretty organic and natural. We sat, I don't remember if we said this at the time or after, but like one thing that I remember was thinking like, it was just like a really long podcast. It was like the two of us just kind of going back and forth talking about stuff. But this time you actually went through the book and you did an initial split. You're like, I think this makes sense. And then you sent that to me and I went through it. I read through it and I suggested a couple of tweaks, and then you incorporated some of those suggestions. So going into the studio on Monday, I had a PDF and it had all the splits. So there were a couple things where I had to talk with the producer. So that's one thing that's different is the producer for the audiobook. So that's somebody, sorry, I'm like not explaining this in a linear way at all. The publisher hires a producer who's, I don't know if this is their only job or just a big focus, but they produce audiobooks. Like this is what they do. I think that person was with us in San Francisco, or because I remember somebody giving us feedback, like, let's redo that part. Like, try saying it differently. Yeah. That person was on Zoom. So I had a laptop and the studio set this all up for me. There was a laptop on a stand and the producer, he was dialed in. I think he lives in Los Angeles or something like that. And then the iPad and the PDF was there. And so there were a few places where we would do something and the producer would say, let's redo it. Or we would get to a section, especially when there were illustrations, and the producer would say like, do you want to describe this illustration or does the text already describe it sufficiently? There were a few places where we decided it would be best to say, check out the PDF that accompanies this audiobook to like see exactly what this looks like. But for the most part, it was just reading. We weren't having to think or decide anything. So it went really fast. But as a result, it like scrambled my brain a little bit. It just like, because I was just reading and talking out loud to myself for the whole time. And sometimes when you like look at a word too much, or you look at like a sentence or a paragraph too much, it like loses its meaning, or you overthink it. You're like, wait, is that the right spelling of that word? Or like, and one of the words we use a lot in the book is differentiation.
Oh God. Yeah.
It's like such a weird, it's a long and kind of unusual word. And so it was like that sensation, but on a grand scale. So I felt pretty scrambled when I was done. But it went smoothly. But that's one thing I would sort of prepare you for, is like, you'll be in more of a single track kind of mode. I wish that I had taken more breaks. I think we took 2 breaks, but I ended up not having lunch until like 2:00, which also added to like the brain scramble effect. If you can try, like, either whether it's the engineer or the producer, try to just like talk normally, basically remind your brain what it's like to talk to another human instead of just like reading to nobody. Yeah. And then the other thing that, I don't know how this will affect you or not, but it was just kind of interesting to see what different studios are like. And I remember the one that we were in San Francisco, it was pretty cozy. It just felt like kind of snug. And there was like, they had tea and snacks. And I just sort of remember it being like this pretty comfortable situation. This studio, it's actually less than a block from where Eli used to live, but it's in a converted industrial building, and it's big. It's like for bands, and they like in the next room over, they had like drums and like big guitar amps and like pianos and like all this stuff set up. It just felt different. It was a little bit more like sort of stark industrial feeling versus cozy, kind of tucked into a small little studio.
Interesting. I'm curious what mine will be like. Mine's in a house. I mean, because for both of us, they just said like, here's where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And so mine is in somebody's house, I guess. So hopefully they know I'm coming and like, it seems like it could be cozy, but
totally.
I'll bring, I think they said there are going to be some snacks there, but I'll bring snacks. Sounds like that's an important one. I mean, we won't be able to go past lunch and actually make progress with me because of the grumbling stomach.
Yeah, right. Now that you know.
It's a built-in fail-safe method to prevent audiobook recording going on too long.
I'm hoping that it's not just in a house, but in a home, and they'll like make you like a soup or something.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. That word differentiation though, I wish there was we're talking about a better phrase. Is there a better way to say freedom of movement?
Right.
God, differentiation's a tough one because there's positioning, but positioning is different.
I think so.
It's different, but it's not the same. It's not the same as differentiation.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say positioning instead of differentiation. And I don't know another way to say differentiation that means precisely that. And it's precisely what we're talking about. So,
and when we talked about it, I think in the early days of the foundation sprint, I don't remember how you felt about this, but I remember making the case for the word differentiation because I like that it's kind of a wonky word, like I like that, but I guess I wasn't thinking about having to say it a lot. It sounds
say it or spell it. Also, whenever we're writing it, whenever I'm somewhere and I have to write it out, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, right. It's like
I listened to John when he said
how many TIs are in this word? Like I lost track of where I am. Like I just wrote TI. Wait, is it ON next or am I?
Right. I'll write like differentiation.
Yeah, right. Just get stuck in an infinite loop.
Well, I think we should probably sign off here so people can get on with their day. And
we've done it again.
We filled the podcast.
All right. Thanks, Jake. Thank you for listening, for watching. This has been episode 17 of Jake and Jay-Z. You can get an email from us every week or so at jakeandjz.com. And if you liked this episode, please hit some of those buttons down below, like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
This is Jake and Jay-Z. This is Jake and Jay-Z.